With respect, the brief was followed exactly as approved. The campaign performed within projected margins.
The conference room was too quiet. Not the productive kind of quiet, but the kind that pressed against Karin Williams's ears until her thoughts felt loud and reckless. Rain streaked down the glass walls, blurring the Manchester skyline into shades of gray. Karin sat upright at the table, her notebook open, pen untouched. She already knew what was coming. "You clearly don't understand the brief," the man at the head of the table said coolly. His voice was smooth, controlled, accented just enough to sound foreign. Karin lifted her eyes. She had noticed him the moment she walked in, tall, immaculately dressed, unfamiliar. Not HR. Not management she recognized. She had assumed he was another consultant brought in to criticize from a distance. "I do understand it," Karin replied before she could stop herself. Every head turned. The man's eyes narrowed slightly as he leaned back in his chair. "Is that so?" Karin felt the heat rush to her face, but the weeks of bottled frustration pushed her forward. Rose slowly to her feet, her long wavy hair sliding down her back like a curtain she refused to hide behind. "With respect," she said, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart, "the brief was followed exactly as approved. The campaign performed within projected margins. Calling it incompetence is inaccurate and unfair." A murmur ran through the room. The man regarded her in silence, fingers steepled. "You're accusing me of being unfair, Ms. Williams?" "Karin Williams." "Well, Ms. Williams," he said calmly, "perhaps you should consider how you speak in meetings." Something sharp ignited in her chest. "Perhaps leadership should consider accountability," she shot back. "Publicly humiliating staff doesn't improve performance, it creates fear." The room went dead still. Someone coughed. Someone else dropped a pen. The man didn't raise his voice. He didn't even look offended. Instead he studied her slowly, thoughtfully, like she was an equation he hadn't expected to solve today. "Sit down," he said quietly. Karin didn't. "No," she replied, surprising even herself. "I won't apologize for defending my work." A sharp intake of breath came from her left. "Karin," a colleague whispered urgently, tugging at her sleeve. "Sit down." She leaned closer, voice barely audible. "That's him." Karin frowned. "Him who?" "The new managing director." The whisper came again, strained with panic. Do-hyun Park, the owner's son. He just took over. The words hit her like ice water. Her body went still. The room tilted. The air vanished from her lungs. Slowly, too slowly, her eyes returned to the man at the head of the table. New managing director. Her mind screamed, "You're fired," before he said anything at all. She sat down abruptly, the scrape of her chair echoing far too loudly. Her hands trembled as she folded them in her lap, nails biting into skin. Fear surged through her chest, raw, consuming. She had just challenged the man who controlled her future. Do-hyun Park watched the change wash over her, the shock, the fear, the instant retreat. He had seen it before. People always folded once they realized who he was. But something about Karin unsettled him. She hadn't known. Her defiance had been real. The meeting ended shortly after, voices stiff, movements rushed. Karin gathered her things in. Silence, her heart hammering. How will I pay rent? What about my visa? My mother back home? As she stood to leave, she felt his gaze on her again. This time it burned. She didn't look back. Behind her, Do-hyun rose slowly from his seat. "Ms. Williams," he said, his voice calm, unreadable. She froze. The room held its breath. "Yes, sir," she replied quietly, fear threading every syllable. "See me in my office." Her stomach dropped. And in that moment, Karin Williams realized that one brave, honest outburst might cost her everything or change her life forever. Karin sat alone in the small waiting area outside the executive office, her bag clutched tightly on her lap like an anchor. The corridor was quiet, too quiet. The ticking of the wall clock felt cruel, each second stretching longer than the last. She had already drafted the apology in her head a dozen times. She had also drafted her resignation letter, twice. You should have kept quiet. You should have known better. You should have sat down. Her mind replayed the meeting over and over, every word she had thrown at him with righteous fire before fear took over. Now the fire was gone, replaced by a cold dread settling deep in her. She thought of everything she stood to lose. Her job. Her stability in a country that still felt new and unforgiving. The life she had fought so hard to build since leaving America. Inside the office, Do-hyun Park stood by the window, hands in his pockets, watching the rain blur Manchester into shadows. He knew exactly what he was doing by making her wait. Power often revealed itself in silence, and he wanted to see if she would shrink under it. But something about her earlier defiance lingered with him. She hadn't been reckless. She hadn't been rude. She had been honest. Most people bowed the moment authority spoke. Karin Williams had stood tall without knowing who stood before her. That mattered. Minutes stretched into nearly an hour. Karin's stomach twisted painfully. Her palms were damp. She imagined HR joining the meeting. Imagined security escorting her out. Imagined the humiliation of packing her desk under curious stares. Finally the door opened. "Ms. Williams," the assistant said. "You may go in now." Karin stood on unsteady legs and walked into the office she was certain would end her career. Do-hyun was seated behind the desk now, posture relaxed, expression unreadable. The room smelled faintly of leather and coffee. Power lived here, quiet, controlled. "Sit," he said. She did. The silence that followed was heavier than shouting would have been. "Do you know why you're here?" he asked calmly. "Yes, sir," Karin replied, her voice soft. "Because I spoke out of turn in the meeting." "You challenged senior leadership," he corrected. She swallowed. "Yes. And embarrassed the company." Karin's fingers tightened in her lap. "That wasn't my intention. But I accept responsibility." He studied her for a long moment, eyes sharp, searching. "Why did you do it?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. "Because it was unfair," she said honestly. "And because staying silent would have meant agreeing to something that wasn't true." She hesitated, then added quietly, "I didn't know who you were." "That's not an excuse, but it's the truth." A flicker crossed his face, something unreadable. "Had you known," he asked, "would you still have spoken?" Her heart pounded. "Yes," she said. "I would have chosen my words more carefully. But I would still have defended my work." For the first time, Do-hyun leaned back, exhaling slowly. "You were disrespectful," he said. "Public confrontation undermines structure." Her chest tightened. "Here it comes." "But," he continued, "you were not wrong." Karin blinked. "I reviewed the brief," he said. "Your work met expectations. The criticism was excessive." Relief crashed into her so suddenly she nearly sagged in her chair. "I am not firing you," Do-hyun said evenly. Her breath shuddered out of her. "However," he added, "your approach was inappropriate. This is a formal reprimand. We'll go on record." "I understand," Karin said quickly. "And I'm truly sorry for how I handled it. I should have requested a private discussion. I apologize for the disruption and for speaking to you that way." She bowed her head slightly, humility threading her words. Do-hyun watched her closely. The apology wasn't forced. The courage hadn't vanished, it had simply matured. "Apology accepted," he said. "Going forward, I expect professionalism." "Yes, sir." "You may go." Karin stood, legs still weak, and turned toward the door. "Ms. Williams?" he added. She paused, heart leaping again. "Yes." "Next time you have an issue," he said calmly, "bring it to me directly." She met his eyes then. "Yes, Mr. Park." As she left the office, relief washed over her, but beneath it stirred something else. Confusion. Curiosity. A strange awareness that the man who had nearly ended her career had also quietly earned her respect. Inside the office, Do-hyun remained seated long after she was gone. He hadn't planned to let her stay. But courage like hers was rare. And he had no intention of wasting it. By the next morning everyone knew. Not the details, never the details, but the fact that Karin Williams had been called into the managing director's office and had walked out with her job intact. In a place where whispers traveled faster than emails, that alone was enough to shift the air around her. Karin felt it the moment she stepped onto the floor. Conversations dipped. Eyes followed. Some curious, some cautious, some quietly impressed. She kept her head high, though her nerves still hummed beneath her skin. The reprimand letter sat heavy in her bag, a reminder that survival didn't mean victory. Still she was here. Still standing. At exactly 10 o'clock an email arrived. From Do-hyun Park. Subject, Campaign Review. Message: Ms. Williams, please bring the Q3 analytics to my office at 10:30. Her heart skipped just once. Professional, she reminded herself. Nothing more. At 10:29 she stood outside his office again, steadier this time. When she entered, Do-hyun didn't look up immediately. He was reviewing documents, sleeves rolled just enough to reveal his watch, his presence filling the room with quiet authority. "Sit," he said, still reading. She did. "Walk me through your projections," he said at last. Karin launched into her analysis, voice confident, numbers precise. She forgot, gradually, to be afraid. This was her strength. Strategy. Insight. Vision. As she spoke, Do-hyun listened without interrupting, his gaze sharp but attentive. When she finished, he nodded once. "You see the market clearly," he said. "Better than most of your peers." Praise, unexpected, controlled. "Thank you, sir." He leaned back. "You're being reassigned." Her stomach clenched. "Reassigned? To my direct oversight." The words landed heavier than a demotion. "I want transparency in this department," he continued. "And people who are willing to speak when something is wrong." Karin hesitated. "Some might think that gives me special consideration." His eyes met hers. "Let them think whatever they want," he said coolly. "Performance will speak louder." She nodded, though uncertainty lingered. From that day on, their paths crossed more often. Meetings that ran late. Emails exchanged after hours. Quick discussions that stretched longer than necessary. Do-hyun remained distant, professional, but Karin began to notice the small things, the way he remembered details she mentioned once, the way his gaze lingered when he thought she wasn't looking. And he noticed her too. Her laughter, soft and rare. The way she worked through pressure without panic. The way she never tried to impress him, only to be honest. Still, there was a line. Boss and subordinate. Power and restraint. One evening, long after most of the office had emptied, Karin stood by the window, staring out at the rain-soaked city. Do-hyun approached quietly, stopping beside her. "Manchester suits you," he said. She smiled faintly. "It's growing on me." A pause stretched between them, comfortable, dangerous. "You don't regret speaking up that day," he said. It wasn't a question. Karin turned to face him. "I regret the fear afterward," she admitted. "But not the truth." For a moment, something softened in his eyes. "That courage," he said quietly, "will take you far. Just be careful who you challenge." She met his gaze, unflinching. "I will." The silence that followed was charged, unspoken, undeniable. Then his phone buzzed. The moment shattered. He stepped back. "Good night, Ms. Williams." "Good night, Mr. Park." As Karin left the building, her pulse raced, not with fear this time but with something far more dangerous. And as Do-hyun watched her walk away, he realized the line he was trying so hard to protect was already beginning to blur. The incident at the office had happened a few days earlier, yet it still lingered in Do-hyun's mind as if it were unfolding again and again. By the time he drove to his mother's house that evening, the sharp edge of the confrontation had dulled, but the impression it left had not. Madame Park was already waiting for him in the living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting gentle shadows across the familiar space. She looked up the moment he entered, her eyes assessing him with the same quiet authority she once used in boardrooms. "You're thinking too much," she said simply. Do-hyun paused. "Is it that obvious?" She smiled faintly. "Your secretary told me about what happened at the office a few days ago." He sat down slowly. "I suspected she would." "A young woman raised her voice at you in a meeting," Madame Park continued. "In your first week back, no less." She lifted her teacup. "I told you to fire her." He met her gaze. "You told me to fire her. And yet," she added, setting the cup down, "she's still employed." "Yes." "Why?" Do-hyun leaned back, choosing his words carefully. "Because she wasn't wrong." She spoke without knowing who I was, but she spoke the truth. Madame Park's eyes narrowed with interest. "Did she realize later?" "She did," he said. "Someone whispered it to her." She froze. Fear replaced defiance in seconds. "And?" She apologized. Sincerely. Silence stretched between them. "You should have fired her," Madame Park said again, her tone measured, testing. Do-hyun shook his head. "No. Fear already punished her enough. Dismissal would have been wasteful." Madame Park studied him, then nodded slowly. "So you chose judgment over pride?" "Yes." "And what is her name?" "Karin Williams." A small, knowing smile curved her lips. "Remember this, Do-hyun. The people brave enough to confront injustice are the ones who will save your company one day." He stood to leave later that night, her words following him to the door. "Be careful," she said softly. "Moments like these don't end when the meeting does." As he stepped into the cool Manchester night, Do-hyun realized she was right. The incident might have happened days ago, but its consequences were only just beginning. The request came without warning 1 week after. Karin, the receptionist, said softly, her expression tight, "Madame Park is here. She wants to see you." Immediately. The word sent a chill straight down Karin's spine. Madame Park. She had heard the name whispered through the office like a quiet threat, the former managing director, the woman whose presence alone could still silence a room. Karin's heart began to race. She already knew why she was being summoned. This is it, she thought. This is where it ends. When she entered the executive meeting room, Madame Park was already seated at the head of the table, elegant and severe, her gaze sharp enough to cut glass. Do-hyun stood near the window, rigid with tension. "Karin Williams," Madame Park said coolly. "Sit." Karin obeyed, hands folded tightly in her lap. "I've been told," Madame Park continued, "that you raised your voice at my son during a meeting. In public." Karin lowered her head. "Yes, ma'am." "And that you challenged his authority." "I challenged a decision," Karin replied carefully, then bowed her head deeper. "But I was wrong. And how I did it? I sincerely apologize for my tone, for my behavior, and for any disrespect it caused you or your son." Silence followed. Madame Park studied her like a flaw in fine porcelain. "You are bold," she said at last. "Or foolish." "Perhaps both," Karin said softly. "But I never intended harm." Before Madame Park could respond, Do-hyun stepped forward. "Mother," he said quietly, "this has already been handled." She turned on him sharply. "Handled by you," she said. "Not by me." "She has apologized," he continued. "Twice. She's been reprimanded. Her performance is strong. There is no reason to keep her," Madame Park cut in. Do-hyun hesitated, then spoke with quiet urgency. "Please, let this go." Madame Park's eyes narrowed. "You are asking me to show mercy. I'm asking you to trust my judgment." The room felt unbearably small. Madame Park looked back at Karin. "You may leave." Karin stood, bowed once more. "Thank you for seeing me, ma'am." She exited on unsteady legs, the door closing softly behind her. Madame Park turned fully to her son now. "You defend her strongly," she said. "Too strongly." "She is an employee," Do-hyun replied evenly. "A capable one." Her gaze bored into him. "Is there something you are not telling me?" The question hung sharp and dangerous between them. Do-hyun didn't hesitate. "No." A long moment passed. Finally, Madame Park exhaled, displeasure etched deep into her expression. "Very well. It stays." Relief loosened something tight in his chest, but only briefly. "Do not make me regret this," she added coldly. "Power is fragile when mixed with sentiment." "I understand," he said. She rose, smoothing her jacket. "See that you do." As she left the office, Do-hyun remained standing, staring at the closed door. He had protected Karin again. And with every defense, the line he swore not to cross grew thinner. Somewhere down the hall, Karin leaned against the wall, breathing slowly, unaware of the quiet promise that had just been made on her behalf or the cost it might one day demand. Karin didn't make it back to her desk. The moment she stepped out of the executive wing, her legs gave way. She turned sharply into the nearest restroom, locked herself into a stall, and finally let the fear catch up to her. Her hands were shaking. Her chest burned with shallow breaths. She pressed her palm over her mouth, fighting back tears that had waited patiently through apologies and bowed heads. Madame Park's cold gaze replayed in her mind over and over. "You are bold. Or foolish." Karin fumbled for her phone and dialed the number she knew by heart. "Hello?" her sister's voice answered, warm and familiar. "Please," Karin whispered, her voice cracking, "pray for me." There was a pause. "Karin, what happened?" "I might lose my job," she said, the words finally spilling. "I did everything right, but I spoke up. And now I don't know if that was a mistake." Her sister didn't rush her. She prayed softly through the phone, steady words of faith, strength, and protection. Karin closed her eyes, gripping the edge of the sink as the trembling slowly eased. When she hung up, she washed her face, squared her shoulders, and returned to her desk. That evening, as the office emptied one by one, Karin stayed behind. She worked with quiet determination, reviewing reports, refining projections, triple-checking data. If this was to be her last day, she would leave nothing unfinished. Excellence, she believed, was a form of prayer too. The lights dimmed automatically, leaving her in a small pool of brightness. She didn't hear him at first. You should go home. Karin looked up sharply. Do-hyun stood a few steps away, coat draped over his arm, keys in hand. Concern softened his usually controlled expression. I didn't realize it was so late, she said quickly, glancing at the clock. You've been here since morning, he said gently. She hesitated, then nodded. I just wanted to make sure everything was done. He studied her face, paler than usual, eyes still carrying the echo of fear. My mother was difficult, he said quietly. Karin swallowed. She had every right to be. No, he said firmly. She didn't. The words startled her. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. You're not losing your job. Her breath hitched. Sir. Listen to me, he said, calm but certain. You're safe here. Something in his tone, steady, sincere, broke through her last defenses. Her shoulders relaxed just slightly. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For speaking for me. I know you did. He didn't deny it. Get some rest, he said. Tomorrow will be better. She nodded, gathering her things. As she walked toward the elevator, her steps lighter than they had been all day, Do-hyun watched her go. He had meant to offer reassurance. Instead, he had given her a promise. And promises, he knew, were far more dangerous than silence. Karin did exactly what she had always done when fear tried to claim her. She worked. Days passed, then weeks, and she poured herself into every assignment with renewed intensity. She arrived early, left late, and treated each task as if it were being judged for the last time. Her reports were sharper, her strategies more deliberate, her presentations impossible to ignore. She did not complain. She did not withdraw. She endured. And slowly people noticed. Do-hyun noticed most of all. From his office, he saw her light still on long after others had gone home. He caught glimpses of her in meetings, quiet but focused, her contributions measured, never careless. The fire that had once flared so boldly was now controlled, refined into something more powerful. It unsettled him. He found himself asking about her projects when he didn't need to, reading her emails twice, pausing outside meetings longer than necessary when she was inside. At night, alone in his apartment, her face surfaced in his thoughts without invitation, her defiance. In the boardroom, her trembling apology, the quiet strength she carried even when she was afraid. This isn't like me, he told himself. He had built his life on discipline and clarity. Emotions were managed, not indulged. People were respected but never allowed too close. Yet Karin Williams had slipped past every rule without trying. He didn't understand it. Why her presence lingered. Why her exhaustion bothered him. Why her courage felt personal. One evening, as he shut down his computer, he glanced through the glass wall again. Her desk light was still on. He exhaled slowly. Something was happening to him. Something he hadn't planned for, hadn't named. And the most dangerous part was this. He had no idea when it began. The office was silent. Not the busy hum of keyboards and quiet conversations, but the deep, hollow stillness that came only after everyone had gone home. Karin sat at her desk, the glow from her screen casting soft light over her tired face. Her long wavy hair was pulled back loosely now, her heels kicked off. Beneath the desk, she had been there for hours. She barely noticed the elevator doors open. Do-hyun stepped out, his tie loosened, coat over his arm. A late meeting across town had dragged longer than expected. He intended only to grab a file and leave. Then he saw the light. Her light. He paused, surprised. As he walked past her desk, Karin looked up suddenly, startled. Oh, sir. I thought everyone had gone. So did I, he replied. Why are you still here? She hesitated, then smiled faintly. I wanted to finish this before tomorrow. He nodded, glancing at the clock. You've been working too hard. She shrugged lightly. It helps me think. There was a brief silence, different from the charged pauses they usually shared. This one felt softer. Would you like some water? He asked. Yes. Thank you. They stood near the small kitchenette, the city lights reflecting through the windows. For the first time since they met, the space between them felt less formal. You're not from Manchester, he said. No, she replied. I'm from the States. Atlanta. What brought you here? She thought for a moment. A fresh start. I needed to prove to myself that I could build something on my own. He studied her. And have you? She met his gaze, honest. I'm trying. Something shifted in his chest. And you? She asked carefully. Why come back now? My mother decided it was time to rest, he said. And someone had to take over. Do you like it? She asked. He smiled faintly. Some days. They returned to her desk, the conversation continuing in low, unguarded tones. About work. About Manchester rain, about small things that somehow felt important. He learned she loved walking by the canal early in the morning. She learned he played the piano when no one was around. When she finally saved her work and shut down her computer, she looked lighter. Thank you, she said. For talking. He nodded. Anytime. As they walked toward the exit together, Do-hyun realized something quietly, unmistakably. This wasn't curiosity anymore. It was interest. And for the first time in a very long while, he wasn't sure he wanted to resist it. Saturday afternoons were Karin's small indulgence. She moved slowly through the grocery store, basket hooked over her arm, earbuds in mind half on her list and half on the quiet relief of not being at work. The week had drained her more than she wanted to admit. Here, among stacked fruits and familiar brands, she could almost pretend life was simple. Karin? She froze. No one in Manchester ever said her name like that, measured, certain. She turned slowly. Do-hyun stood a few feet behind her, dressed casually in a dark sweater and jeans, hands tucked into his pockets. Without the tailored suits and polished shoes, he looked younger, more human. Less like her boss and far more unsettling. Sir? She said, pulling out her earbuds. Hello. I thought it was you, he said. I wasn't sure. She laughed softly, nerves threading the sound. I didn't expect to see you here. Likewise. His eyes flicked to her basket. You cook. Sometimes, she replied. When I'm not too tired. He nodded as if filing the detail away. What are you making? Jollof rice, she said, then smiled. Or at least attempting to. His brows lifted with interest. You'll have to teach me someday. The word someday landed with more weight than either of them acknowledged. They walked toward the checkout together, conversation light, careful, circling around safer topics. Karin was acutely aware of how close he was, how easily they fell into step. Outside, the sky was overcast, the air sharp with approaching rain. Do you live far? He asked as they paused near the exit. About 20 minutes by bus. He glanced at the darkening clouds. I can take you. Oh, that's not necessary, she said quickly. I'm fine. He didn't smile, but his tone was gentle, insistent. Please. It's on my way. She hesitated. Every rule she had set for herself flared at once. Boss. Boundary. Yet something about the normalcy of the moment disarmed her. All right, she said finally. Thank you. The drive was quiet at first, the city sliding past them in muted colors. Then gradually the silence softened. You're different outside the office, he said. So are you, she replied before thinking. He glanced at her, amused. Is that a good thing? Yes, she said honestly. They talked about nothing and everything. About music. About missing home. About the strange comfort of being alone in a city full of people. When they pulled up outside her building, Karin reached for the door. Thank you, she said. For the ride. He didn't unlock the doors immediately. Karin, he said quietly, I hope you know, I didn't help you because you spoke up. She looked at him, confused. I helped you because you earned it, he continued. Every day since. Something warm spread through her chest. I know, she said softly. He finally unlocked the doors. As she stepped out into the cool evening air, groceries in hand, she felt it clearly now, the shift. The certainty that whatever was happening between them was no longer confined to late nights and office walls. And as Do-hyun watched her walk away, he knew one thing for sure. This was no longer accidental. It was beginning. After dropping Karin off, Do-hyun drove home in silence. The city lights passed him by, but he barely noticed them. His mind replayed the evening over and over, the way she had smiled nervously in the car, the softness in her voice when she said, thank you, the quiet strength she carried even in ordinary moments. By the time he reached his apartment, she had already settled too deeply into his thoughts. He tried to distract himself. He loosened his tie, poured a glass of water, opened his laptop. Nothing worked. Karin was everywhere. With a quiet sigh, he reached for his phone and dialed his secretary. Send me Karin Williams's number, he said simply. There was no pause, no question. Yes, sir, came the immediate reply. Minutes later, the number appeared on his screen. He stared at it for a long moment, aware of the line he was about to step closer to. Then he told himself he would only call once, just to be sure. It was already night when he pressed the call. Karin had just finished preparing for bed when her phone rang. A known number. She hesitated before answering. "Hello? Karin?" a familiar voice said gently. "It's Do-hyun." Her breath caught. "Sir?" she said, startled. "Is everything all right?" "Yes," he replied. "I hope I'm not calling too late." "No, I'm just surprised." "So am I," he admitted softly. "But I couldn't stop thinking after I dropped you off." She sat down slowly, her heart racing. "I wanted to ask," he continued, "since it's still the weekend, would you like to go out with me? Tomorrow?" Silence stretched between them. "Go out?" she asked quietly. "Lunch," he said quickly. "Somewhere public. Just to talk." Karin closed her eyes, every warning bell ringing at once. "I don't know if that's wise," she said. "I understand," he replied at once. "If you're uncomfortable, say no." She hesitated, then asked, "Why me?" "Because you stay in my thoughts," he said honestly. "And I'd like to know you better." Her chest tightened. "This could complicate things," she whispered. "Yes," he agreed. "But I don't want to pretend I don't feel it." The line went quiet. Finally she exhaled. "Just lunch. Nothing more." A note of relief crept into his voice. "Of course. And if it affects work," she added firmly, "we stop." "Immediately," he said. "I promise." They ended the call soon after. Karin stared at her phone long after it went dark, her heart still racing. Across the city, Do-hyun set his phone down and leaned back, knowing that with one call, something irreversible had begun. Karin arrived at the little bistro with her heart fluttering, unsure if it was nerves or anticipation, or both. The streets of Manchester were busy, but stepping inside, she felt the world shrink to just the soft lighting, the clinking of cutlery, and him. Do-hyun was already there, leaning casually against a chair, but even casual couldn't hide the presence he carried. When he looked up and smiled at her, her breath caught. The man who commanded boardrooms, who had once reduced her fear to trembling, now seemed entirely human, warm, approachable, somehow safe. "You look different," she blurted before she could stop herself. "So do you," he replied gently, his voice carrying that rare softness that always seemed to reach her heart. The lunch began with small talk, but soon laughter flowed easily between them. He told her about his childhood, studying abroad, and moments of loneliness she had never imagined. It shared stories of growing up in Atlanta, of lessons learned through fear, strength, and courage. Every laugh, every shared glance, every accidental brush of their hands across the table seemed to chip away the walls she had built around herself. Karin found herself looking at him differently now, not the distant, untouchable boss, but the man who was curious, attentive, and genuine. She marveled at the simplicity of it, a shared joke, a mutual story, a look that lasted a second too long and yet felt perfectly safe. As the meal came to an end, Do-hyun didn't reach for his wallet and didn't suggest leaving. Instead, he leaned forward, eyes locking with hers. "Karin," he said, voice low, almost trembling with a quiet intensity, "I have to ask you something." Her heart skipped. Every nerve in her body focused on him. "I don't want to pretend yesterday didn't happen or even today," he continued. "I want you to be my girlfriend." Time seemed to pause. The world outside, the street, the chatter, the clinking of glasses faded. It was just the two of them, suspended in the moment, breathing the same air. Her chest tightened, not with fear but with the warmth of being truly seen. Her eyes glistened slightly and a small, nervous smile tugged at her lips. "It can't be public, not at work," she whispered. "I understand," he said immediately, reaching across the table. His hand covered hers, warm and grounding. "Private. Just ours." Karin felt a flutter deep in her chest, the kind that made the world feel softer, safer, brighter. It nodded, and the tension in her shoulders released in a sigh she hadn't realized she was holding. "I'd like that," she said, her voice steady now but laced with emotion. His smile broke wide, a mix of relief, joy, and something tender that made her chest ache. "Me too," he murmured, squeezing her hand gently. They sat there for a long moment, hands entwined, hearts sinking in silence. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The city outside went on as usual, but inside that little bistro, everything had shifted. Karin realized that the courage it had taken to speak up in a meeting, the fear she had carried when facing Madame Park, the countless quiet struggles at work, all of it had led to this one fragile, heartwarming moment. Do-hyun's eyes never left hers, and she finally let herself believe that perhaps, just perhaps, this connection, quiet, dangerous, exhilarating, was exactly where they were meant to be. And for the first time in a long time, Karin allowed herself to feel safe. Truly safe. For 2 months, Karin and Do-hyun's secret love grew quietly, beautifully. By day, they maintained the professional facades, exchanging reports, attending meetings, replying to emails. Yet beneath every glance, every subtle brush of hands, every shared smile, their connection pulsed like a hidden current, alive and undeniable. Evenings and weekends belonged solely to them. They wandered through Manchester's cobbled streets, holding hands, laughing over coffee, discovering quiet cafes and little bookstores. Sometimes they drove to the countryside, escaping the city lights where the world shrank to just the two of them. Their conversations were endless, weaving through dreams, fears, and hopes. Karin shared ambitions of building something meaningful beyond spreadsheets and office walls. Do-hyun revealed the pressures of family expectations and the desire to live life on his own terms. Each other's presence, they could be unguarded, their masks unnecessary, their vulnerabilities welcomed. And there were the kisses, small, teasing, electric at first, then lingering, deep, and filled with a quiet longing. A brush of lips in a cafe corner. A stolen kiss while walking along the canal. The warmth of his hands cradling her face as their foreheads pressed together under the soft street lights. Each kiss carried more than desire, it carried trust, reassurance, and the joy of finally finding each other. One evening, after a late dinner, Do-hyun stopped near the river, pulling Karin close. The city lights reflected in the water, but they barely noticed. His fingers brushed her hair from her face, his thumb caressing her cheek. "Karin," he whispered, voice low and trembling, "I can't stop thinking about you." She smiled, her lips brushing against his in a soft, lingering kiss that spoke of longing, excitement, and relief all at once. They stood together, wrapped in each other's arms, exchanging quiet kisses that deepened naturally, on cheeks, on lips, on foreheads, each one affirming the connection that had quietly grown between them over weeks of stolen moments and shared dreams. "I never imagined this," she murmured against his chest, breathless from the closeness. "Neither did I," he said, holding her tighter, lips brushing hers again in a gentle, lingering promise. "But now that it's real, I don't want it to end." Their kisses were not hurried, they were patient, tender, each one a heartbeat of its own. Every touch, every laugh, every shared glance added to the private world they were building together. In those 2 months, their love grew in quiet intimacy. Not just in stolen kisses and lingering embraces, but in the comfort of knowing that no matter the whispers at the office, no matter the pressures outside, they had each other. It was secret, it was thrilling, and it was theirs. And as they finally parted that night, lingering in a final warm kiss before heading home, they both knew this was not just a romance, it was a bond, fragile and precious, yet unbreakable, a love they were determined to protect. After a long conversation in his penthouse, where Do-hyun reassured Karin and held her close, while she tried to calm her nerves, he finally spoke with a quiet determination. "Karin," he said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, "I know this is frightening, but it's time. We can't keep hiding anymore. You need to meet my mother." Her heart skipped. "Meet her now?" "Yes," he said firmly but gently. "I've told you everything. I'll handle my mother. You just need to be yourself. That's all I ask." Karin drew a deep breath, nodding. Her nerves were still there, but Do-hyun's calm presence grounded her. "All right," she whispered. They drove through Manchester streets, the city lights reflecting on the rain-slicked pavement. Karin clutched her bag nervously, stealing glances at him as he drove, fingers lightly brushing hers in subtle reassurance. Finally, they arrived at Do-hyun's family home, a stately house in one of Manchester's quieter neighborhoods. The grandeur of the place, with its polished marble floors and high ceilings, made Karin feel small, and her pulse quickened as they walked up the steps. Do-hyun opened the door. Madame Park stood there, sharp-eyed and composed, her presence commanding the room before she even spoke. "Mother," Do-hyun began, taking a steady breath, "there's someone I want you to meet." "Karin." Karin stepped forward, feeling every eye on her as she offered a polite smile. Do-hyun stood beside her, his hand lightly touching her back in reassurance. "She's the woman I've been seeing," he said carefully. "We've been dating privately for 2 months to be sure our feelings for each other are real." Madame Park's eyes widened in shock, and for a moment no one spoke. The air between them was taut, charged with tension. Karin could feel the weight of his mother's gaze as it measured every detail, her clothes, her posture, the way she carried herself. 2 months. 2 months of hidden love, and now all of it was laid bare. 2 months. Madame Park finally said, her voice controlled but icy. And you didn't think to tell me sooner? Do-hyun remained calm, meeting his mother's gaze with quiet conviction. We wanted to be sure, mother. We needed to understand what this was before involving anyone else. Karen's hands trembled slightly, but Do-hyun gave her a reassuring squeeze, a silent reminder that she wasn't alone. Stepping closer, he added softly, Karin is someone I care about deeply. She is important to me. And I wanted you to meet her as she truly is, not as someone hiding in secrecy. The atmosphere in the room remained tense, thick with Madame Park's skepticism, but Karin took a deep breath and lifted her chin slightly. Her small, polite smile was her way of saying she was ready to stand by him no matter the storm ahead. In that moment she realized something profound. With Do-hyun by her side she could face anything, even his formidable mother. The tension in the living room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Karin felt it pressing down on her chest as Madame Park's sharp gaze swept over her. The house was grand, the polished floors gleaming under the chandeliers, but Karin felt small, acutely aware of the unspoken questions. Who is this woman? Can she handle my son? Is she worthy? Do-hyun stood firmly beside her, hand lightly resting on her back. His presence was steady, a shield against the storm she knew was coming. Madame Park's voice finally broke the silence. 2 months and you kept this from me? She asked, eyes narrowing. Do you even understand the kind of responsibility you're taking on? Karin straightened her back, taking a deep breath. She could feel her pulse racing, but she reminded herself that she wasn't just here for herself, she was here for the man she loved. Yes, Madame Park, she said respectfully, her voice steady but sincere. I understand. Completely. And I want you to know I would never take Do-hyun for granted. He is one of the most important people in my life, and I promise to care for him, respect him, and support him in every way I can. Madame Park's eyes flicked to Do-hyun, then back to Karin, silently judging. Karin continued, letting her words come straight from her heart. I may not have been born into your family, she said, but I believe family isn't just about blood. It's about love, loyalty, and trust. And I hope that in time I can prove to you that I am someone Do-hyun can rely on, not just as a partner, but as a friend to you as well. She paused, and then, gesturing naturally, she helped carry a small tray of tea across the room, offering it with a warm smile. It was simple, polite, but it spoke volumes. Kindness, humility, and thoughtfulness. The silence stretched, thick with scrutiny. Karen's heart pounded, but she stood firm, meeting Madame Park's gaze without faltering. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Madame Park's lips curved into a small, almost imperceptible smile. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. You speak well, she said, her voice softer now. And your actions, they show care. Perhaps I judged too quickly. Karin exhaled quietly, a lightness blooming in her chest. She bowed her head slightly in respect. Thank you, Madame Park. That means a lot to me. Do-hyun let out a quiet, relieved breath and gave her hand a subtle squeeze. Madame Park studied her for another moment, then nodded fully, the tension in her posture finally easing. Very well, she said, her voice carrying a touch of warmth now. I accept you. Welcome to the family in my eyes. Karin felt a rush of relief and happiness. She smiled brightly, her eyes shining with gratitude, and gave a respectful nod. Thank you, Madame Park. I won't let you or Do-hyun down. Do-hyun pulled her gently into a quiet embrace, pressing a kiss to her temple, and Karin leaned into him, heart swelling. In that moment she realized the hardest step had been facing Madame Park, but with sincerity, patience, and kindness, love had won the day. The tension dissolved into something warmer, softer. For the first time since they had arrived, the room felt like it belonged to all three of them, a family slowly, cautiously forming, one heartfelt step at a time. Monday morning arrived, and with it, the reality that Karin and Do-hyun's secret could no longer remain hidden. The moment they stepped into the office together, the subtle glances and whispered curiosity began. People paused mid-task, eyes widening as the realization dawned. The managing director and Karin, the once feared yet admired employee, were dating openly. A hush fell over the conference room when Do-hyun arrived for the first meeting with Karin by his side. Murmurs filled the room, low but persistent, as colleagues tried to reconcile the bold, assertive woman they'd always known with the new, confident place she held by his side. Karin felt her pulse quicken at first, but Do-hyun's hand brushed hers under the table, a small, grounding gesture, and she relaxed. They didn't need to announce it further. The subtle confidence in their shared smiles and quiet touches spoke volumes. Even the office rumors, which had once threatened to undermine her, now seemed almost powerless. Her courage in speaking up, her intelligence in handling projects, and now her connection with the boss created a new kind of respect, one tinged with admiration and surprise. Outside the office, her relationship with Madame Park continued to flourish. The initial tension of their first meeting had given way to warmth and cautious friendship. Karin's sincerity, kindness, and willingness to support Do-hyun in every aspect of his life had earned her mother-in-law's trust and affection. One afternoon, Karin received a call from Madame Park herself. The older woman's voice was warm, almost playful. "I called to tell you," Madame Park said, "how happy I am that you and Do-hyun have each other. You've brought a light into his life that I haven't seen in years. I spoke to your sister already. I told her everything. She sounded delighted for you." Karin's eyes widened in surprise, and then a soft laugh escaped her. "Thank you, Madame Park. That means a lot. I'll do my best not to let either of you down." "I know you will," Madame Park replied. "And Karin, it's a joy to see him smiling like this again. You've made him very happy." Karin ended the call feeling lighter than she had in months. The weight of secrecy was gone, replaced by acceptance and joy. She knew challenges would still arise, the office would gossip, pressures would mount, but for the first time she felt fully supported, not just by Do-hyun but by the woman who mattered most to him. Back at the office, the subtle warmth between her and Do-hyun could no longer hide behind discretion. A touch on the shoulder, a shared smile in passing, a supportive glance during meetings, all of it spoke of a love that was now visible, undeniable, and unashamed. And while some colleagues whispered, some were surprised, and some silently envied, Karin felt a freedom she had never known. She had love, respect, and the rare courage to be seen, exactly as she was, bold, brilliant, and deeply cherished. With Do-hyun by her side and Madame Park's blessing, she realized something profound. Love was no longer something to hide. It was something to live proudly and openly, every single day. Months had passed since Karin and Do-hyun had made their relationship public. Their love had settled into a rhythm, playful, supportive, and full of warmth. Weekends were filled with laughter, city adventures, and quiet moments where the world seemed to disappear around them. Workdays were lighter because they carried each other's confidence and trust, even in the office, where whispers had long since turned into admiration. Do-hyun had been planning something special for weeks, quietly coordinating with his mother. Madame Park, now fully supportive and even delighted, had insisted on helping him make the moment unforgettable. One evening, he called Karin under the pretense of a casual dinner. She arrived at his penthouse, unsuspecting, her mind free of suspicion. The apartment was dimly lit, candles casting a soft glow across the room, the city lights twinkling behind the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Do-hyun?" she asked softly, her curiosity piqued. He smiled, taking her hand and guiding her to the center of the living room. "Karin, I've been thinking about us," he began, his voice low, steady, and full of emotion. "About how much you mean to me and how much happier you've made my life. I don't want to imagine a future without you." Her chest tightened, heart fluttering, as she realized something extraordinary was happening. From a side room, Madame Park stepped forward, smiling warmly. "I may have helped with a little planning," she said, her eyes twinkling. "But this moment, this is all him." Karin turned back to Do-hyun, whose gaze was unwavering, full of tenderness and resolve. He dropped to one knee, pulling a small, elegant box from his pocket. "Karin," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I love you so much, baby. I want to spend my life with you. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes. She felt the depth of his words, the sincerity behind every glance, every beat of his heart, and the warmth of their shared journey over the past months. "Yes," she whispered, voice trembling with joy. "I love you too, I will marry you." A radiant smile broke across Do-hyun's face as he slid the ring onto her finger. He rose, pulling her into a gentle embrace, holding her close as if never letting go. Madame Park clapped softly, her eyes shimmering with pride and happiness. "Welcome to the family officially, Karin," she said, and for the first time Karin felt the weight of love surrounding Her from every angle, Do-hyun, his mother, and the life they were building together. That night, the penthouse was filled with laughter, whispered promises, and quiet, heartwarming moments of closeness. Every candle flickered like a small celebration of the love they had. Nurtured, bold, passionate, and now committed. As they looked out over the Manchester skyline, fingers intertwined, Karin whispered, "I never imagined I could be this happy." Do-hyun kissed her forehead gently, smiling. "Neither did I. But here we are and nothing will ever change that." In that perfect moment, they weren't just a couple, they were partners, lovers, and soon-to-be spouses, ready to face life together with hearts fully open. As soon as Karin left Do-hyun's penthouse, she couldn't contain her excitement any longer. Dialed her sister's number, her hands trembling slightly as she pressed the phone to her ear. "Hello?" her sister's cheerful voice answered. "I have the best news," Karin said, her voice shaking with joy. "Do-hyun proposed." I said yes. A moment of stunned silence came, followed by squeals of delight. "Karin. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. I'm coming to Manchester immediately. We have so much to plan." Karin laughed through her tears, heart full. "Yes. We have a wedding to plan and I want you here with me for everything. You'll help me pick the dress, the flowers, everything?" "I wouldn't miss it for the world," her sister replied. "I'm so happy for you. You deserve this, Karin." The months that followed were a whirlwind of excitement, planning, and anticipation. Do-hyun was involved in every detail, yet always careful to ensure Karin's wishes came first. They chose a grand venue in Manchester, a place that reflected both elegance and warmth and invited friends, colleagues, and family from near and far. The day of the wedding arrived, bright and golden. The city seemed to hum in celebration. Karin, radiant in a flowing white gown, was a vision of elegance and joy, her long wavy hair cascading over her shoulders. Do-hyun, in a tailored suit that matched his commanding presence, could not take his eyes off her. As they exchanged vows, the entire hall felt suspended in magic. Do-hyun's voice was full of emotion as he promised to love, protect, and cherish her forever. Karin responded with equal sincerity, tears of joy spilling down her cheeks, her words carrying every ounce of the courage, love, and hope she had nurtured over the past months. Madame Park, seated proudly at the front, couldn't hide her happiness. She had witnessed their love grow from secrecy into something genuine and powerful. Now, seeing them vow their lives to each other, she smiled, her eyes shimmering with approval and pride. The reception was a celebration like no other. Laughter, music, and dancing filled the night. Friends and family toasted to their love, the story of the couple who had navigated fear, office gossip, and family expectations to find one another, capturing everyone's admiration. The wedding became the talk of the city, not just for its beauty, but for the love that radiated from every glance, every touch, and every smile between Karin and Do-hyun. That night, as they shared a quiet moment away from the crowd, Do-hyun took her hands in his. "You're incredible," he whispered, eyes shining with love. "I can't believe I get to spend the rest of my life with you." Karin smiled, heart full, and rested her head against his chest. "Neither can I, but I know we're exactly where we're meant to be." And under the Manchester sky, amidst the glow of city lights and the echoes of laughter and celebration, Karin and Do-hyun began the next chapter of their life together, hand in hand, hearts intertwined and love shining brighter than ever. After the whirlwind of wedding celebrations, Karin and Do-hyun finally escaped to the turquoise waters and white sands of the Bahamas for their honeymoon. The moment they stepped off the plane, the tropical breeze, the warm sun, and the gentle sound of the waves instantly melted away the stress and excitement of the past months. Karin, radiant in a flowing sundress, couldn't stop smiling as she grabbed Do-hyun's hand and dragged him toward the water. "I can't believe we're finally here," she exclaimed, laughing as the sand squished between her toes. Do-hyun laughed, his eyes twinkling. "I've been looking forward to this as much as you." "No office, no stress, just us." They spent their days exploring hidden beaches, snorkeling through colorful coral reefs, and enjoying quiet candlelit dinners on the shore. Every moment was a discovery not just of the islands but of each other. One afternoon, as they lounged on a secluded stretch of beach, Do-hyun leaned closer, brushing a strand of hair from her sun-kissed face. "Karin, you've made my life brighter than I ever imagined," he whispered. She smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. "And you've made mine fuller, warmer, and happier than I could have dreamed." Their evenings were filled with laughter, playful races along the water, and tender moments. Beneath the stars, Do-hyun would pull her close during walks on the shore, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, and gently, passionately, her lips, each kiss a promise, a celebration of their love and trust. One night, after a long day of adventure, they sat by a small bonfire on the beach. The flames danced in the gentle wind, casting a golden glow over their faces. Do-hyun wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. "Karin," he murmured, voice husky with emotion, "I still can't believe this is real, that we have each other completely." She looked up at him, her eyes shining. "It is real. And I wouldn't change a single thing." The waves whispered against the shore as they shared a long, lingering kiss, the kind that made the rest of the world disappear. Their hands intertwined, fingers exploring, holding, never wanting to let go. In the privacy of the Bahamian night, under the vast sky and the gentle lull of the sea, they felt their love deepen, unspoken words and tender touches binding them closer than ever. For Karin and Do-hyun, the Bahamas wasn't just a honeymoon, it was a paradise where their hearts could be free, where their love could flourish openly and joyfully, and where every moment was a memory etched in warmth, trust, and passion. As they watched the sunrise the next morning, wrapped in each other's arms, Karin whispered softly, "This is perfect." Do-hyun kissed her temple, smiling. "Perfect because it's us." And in that endless horizon of sun and sea, they knew that whatever the future held, their love was unstoppable, deep, enduring, and as boundless as the ocean before them. After their magical honeymoon in the Bahamas, Karin and Do-hyun returned to Manchester with hearts full and spirits soaring. The city that had once been the backdrop of office tensions and whispered rumors now welcomed them as a couple openly in love. At the office, their colleagues had long since adjusted to their relationship. The initial surprise and gossip had faded into admiration. People saw the quiet strength, support, and genuine happiness they brought to each other. Even in meetings and project discussions, there was a subtle ease between them, glances, smiles, and small touches that spoke volumes about their partnership both in life and at work. Do-hyun continued leading the company with his usual brilliance, but now he did so with Karin's unwavering support. Karin herself thrived, her confidence and skill shining even brighter now, unburdened by secrecy or fear. She felt respected, seen, and loved, not just as Do-hyun's partner but as a strong, independent woman in her own right. At home, the penthouse had become a warm sanctuary. Candles, music, and laughter filled their evenings. They cooked together, shared quiet conversations on the balcony overlooking the city, and often reminisced about their journey, from that first fiery outburst in the office to stolen moments, secret dates, Madame Park's approval, and their dreamlike wedding. Madame Park continued to be a loving presence in their lives, frequently visiting, sharing meals, and enjoying her new role in the family. She had grown fond of Karin, seeing her as the daughter she had chosen for her son, rather than as an outsider. Karin in turn cherished her relationship with Madame Park, grateful for the guidance, care, and acceptance she offered. Karin also shared the joy with her sister, who came to Manchester for the wedding and stayed to celebrate the couple's new life. The sisters laughed over wedding stories, planned family gatherings, and shared quiet moments together, strengthening bonds that distance and time had never broken. One quiet evening, as the city lights glittered below, Do-hyun held Karin close on the balcony. "Can you believe how far we've come?" he asked softly, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. Karin rested her head against his chest, smiling. "From office chaos to this, I never imagined it could be this beautiful." He kissed the top of her head, whispering, "And it will only get better. Together we can handle anything." In that moment they both knew it was true. Life would bring challenges, work pressures, family obligations, and the occasional gossip, but nothing could shake the love they had built. Stronger than fear, richer than expectation, it was a love that had endured, flourished, and now thrived openly for all to see. And so, Karin and Do-hyun began their life as husband and wife, not just in name, but in heart, mind, and soul, ready to face the world together, hand in hand, hearts intertwined, their story a testament to courage, love, and the joy of finding the one who truly completes you. Months had passed since Karin and Do-hyun's wedding, and life had settled into a joyful rhythm. Their penthouse in Manchester was filled with warmth, laughter, and a love that had only deepened since their honeymoon in the Bahamas. One morning, Karin sat across from Do-hyun at the breakfast table, a soft glow on her face and her hands resting over her stomach. Do-hyun, she said, a mixture of awe and excitement in her voice, we're going to have a baby. Do-hyun froze for a moment, his eyes widening before a huge smile spread across his face. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close as his heart raced with happiness. A baby, he whispered, almost in disbelief. Our family is growing. He didn't waste a second. After making sure Karin was comfortable, he called his mother, his voice vibrating with joy. Mother, I have wonderful news. Karin and I were expecting a baby. There was a pause, and then Madame Park's laughter came through the phone, warm and full of delight. I knew it, she exclaimed. Oh, Do-hyun, that's the best news I've heard in a long time. I'll be there soon and I'm bringing gifts. True to her word, Madame Park arrived that afternoon, arms full of carefully chosen presents, tiny clothes, a soft blanket, and a keepsake box for the baby's first treasures. She looked at Karin with a mixture of pride and affection. You've made my son very happy, she said, smiling. And now I can see how happy this little one will make you both. Karin's eyes glistened. Thank you, Madame Park. Your support means the world to us. Do-hyun wrapped an arm around Karin, holding her hand. Our family is growing, he said softly, glancing at her with love. And it feels perfect. Madame Park nodded, her eyes shining. It is perfect. And I promise to be here for all of you, every step of the way. The penthouse seemed brighter that day, filled with laughter, love, and the anticipation of a new life. Karin rested her head on Do-hyun's shoulder, feeling a deep sense of peace and joy. They had journeyed from office tension and whispered rumors to love, marriage, and now the promise of a child, a new chapter in their extraordinary story. As the three of them sat together, surrounded by gifts and warmth, Karin knew that their lives were about to change forever. But with Do-hyun by her side, Madame Park supporting them, and a baby on the way, she felt ready for anything. Theirs was a love that had faced challenges, grown stronger in secrecy, and now flourished, openly, ready to embrace the future together. Thank you for watching. We appreciate your support in this channel. See you in the next story.